spirits interact with our spirits, with our bodies. So all this sort of interaction give rise to humanity, right? The fact that we live. And we have a very interesting feature that we are viable systems, right? And a viable system is a system that can live on its own. It has its own separate existence, right? So we can live on our own, right? We do adapt. If we have a lack of food or water, we have our own alarms that now is the time to eat, now is the time to drink. You need some air. Pain is an alarming mechanism that there is something wrong that needs your attention, right? This is the whole idea of pain, right? So the system is structured in a way to make you survive, right? So somehow, when we try to build teams, we try to build teams as viable systems. So we need to understand all of these principles for viable systems and try to apply it for teams, and consequently try to apply it to startups. The challenge is the more elements you deal with, the more complexity you are dealing with, and it becomes more harder to design such a thing. So that's why it needs some sort of a knowledge or some sort of an experience to know how to develop viable systems. So this is what we are going to speak about. I will not spend much time on explaining the ideas of a viable system. Today, I want to focus on some sort of a very, I would say, personal perspective to entrepreneurship and taking action and working with other people, because many of the dynamics has to do with working with people. So your team, your customers, your investors, your suppliers. At the end of the day, most of the active elements in the system are people, right? So if you have a major problem in dealing with people, probably it will be an uphill battle, right? So so this is basically the plan, and we will have a simulation today to play together. We will be split into teams, and we will play the simulation on the second half of the session. Excited?
Yes.
People
Okay.
in teams, that's the help I need.
Yeah, okay, interesting. We all do need. So, a viable system model. Can you all see this? So, the core of any system is the kind of the operation of the system, the thing that this system is designed to do, what this system produce, right? So if you are in a startup, probably what you are producing is your product or your service, right? So that's why most of the startups, they start with what? With what? Idea and starting to develop a prototype, right? Develop a thing. It doesn't make any sense to start an HR function, for example, or to start building partnership or developing sales channels, right? You need to develop the damn thing first, right? So operations, or the core function of your company or your startup, is probably the first thing that come into existence, right? And this function is in direct contact with your environment, right? So this is the environment. This is the market around you. It's not only the customers, but it could be competitors, regulation, all sorts of things in the environment. So the external world, right? And what you see here, this is more of the communication channels between your entity and the environment, right? And in order to be viable, you want your core operation to continuously doing what? To the environment. Say again? Adapting, right? It needs to continuously adapt to the environment, right? And what do you think of the environment? Is it stable or changing or Changing all the time or sometime? All the time it's changing, right?
Sort of varies, but always changing something.
Yeah, and definitely it will be relative, but it's changing all the time. So what will happen to the operations? It will be also changing because it wants to adapt very quickly to the environment. So if we want to draw a simple graph for change over time for the operation, how it will look like? So like we are developing a product. Say again? Is it cycle? So the environment is changing all the time, and we are trying to adapt all the time.
I think I should go linear, maybe.
Okay,
What
so
are you showing?
like this?
What is that?
Yeah.
Forget about this. I'm sorry. Is it linear like this?
What are you plotting? What's
The kind of activities, the kind of effort the core operation group is putting in action. If I'm all the time trying to adapt,
Yeah, that will vary.
yeah, it will be oscillating like this, right? Because all the time I'm adapting. I mean, the customer wants like this kind of design, but another type of customers, they want another kind of design. And now they want a new version of the product and so forth. So I'm always trying to adapt. But the downside of the adaptation is this kind of oscillating behavior, right? And this is the problem of continuous adaptation, right?
So is the oscillation in workflow, or is it in,
And the effort put into the adaptation, right? So if you are always trying to adapt, the amount of resources, the amount of time, the amount of effort you will be putting, it will be all the time is oscillating, right? Because you are trying to adapt to changing things, right? Don't get into the details of it. Just understand that there is something changing here, and all the time I'm trying to adapt to whatever is changing, right? So one of the key things, so this is the primary activities that we are doing, the project team, it's quasi-autonomous groups. But in order to tackle the issue of the oscillation of the continuous movement, you want to damp this kind of oscillation. So you do some sort of a second system 2, which is communication, conflict resolution, and stabilization. And in real companies, this is the kind of standardization. Why companies do standards? Because they want to damp variation. They want to damp continuous adaptation. They want to develop standards because it saves money, save time, it saves energy to do other stuff, right? So this is the whole idea of having a system 2 that damp such an continuous adaptation. And then, even if you are damping all the time, the problem is you damp too much, right? So you want to have some sort of another channel, which is away from the typical standards, that go and somehow audit the activities happening and see if there is any increase in the over damption of the activities here. So this is a kind of a special auditing function that you go and check on these kind of operations. So that's why in companies they have like corporate audits and this kind of regular, not very regular, but kind of a special task forces to check on special things. Like for example in Siemens, we used to have a corporate audit every 3 years. So they come and audit all what's happening in the individual countries, right?
I must say, I think a lot of that is just to check on employees, isn't it?
No, the idea here is not the employees. So you check on the general operations and the way the company is managed, right? But this is in the large corporation. But of course, even in a startup, even when you put standards for a group of people to work on, every now and then you want to go and check how these standards are working. Maybe there is a problem and now you damped the activities too much and there is no room for innovation, for example, because you put lots of standards, lots of processes, lots of systems, which we spoke about as an abnormal problem in the early stages in the life cycle of a startup, right? You remember this, right? So in the early stages, having too much systems, too much processes in place is actually an abnormal problem, right? You don't want to have this in the beginning. You want to keep things a little bit flexible, a little bit fuzzy, so that you encourage more and more innovation until you find the exact customer segment, the exact product you want to deliver to the customers, right? So the function of system 3 is the internal regulation, optimization, and synergy. It's making the balance between delegation, making people empowered to work on their own, operate and adapt, right? And at the same time, you want to coordinate what those people are doing. Those you can think of those as like two product lines or two teams in place doing two different things. So you want to make sure that it's not fully empowered, so they are doing whatever they want, and it's not too coordinated, so the people are tied up, they cannot move. So this is the whole idea of this system, to strike this balance. The problem with this is you are always managing the adaptation to what?
Environment.
Which environment?
The external environment.
External environment, and it's the current environment. It's the current situation, right? So the problem with this is actually you are missing the future opportunities, the future threats, whatever is coming later on. So here, it's kind of a firefighting mood, right? You are always adapting to things that happen now. So you are in a reactive mood, right? You don't want to be all the time in a reactive mood. You want to shift into a what? A proactive mood, right? So in order to be proactive, you want to develop some sort of an intelligence function. And this intelligence function, it goes out and try to understand what are the potential opportunities in the environment and also the potential threats, right? And based on this, the intelligent function feed back to the cohesion function and develop all sort of communication patterns, development patterns for those core operations, not only to adapt to the current environment, but also to future ones. Make sense? Is it clear? Any question? Go ahead.
So, for example,
George.
Apple, yeah, George.
Yeah.
George. So, Apple, for example, with developing the iPhone, would you say that this kind of development is a reaction to the current environment or to the future environment?
Good question. What do you think?
I'd say not necessarily either myself. I may not be understanding this right. But
Well-
sometimes you're just trying to make money, you're trying to grow the company, so you may not actually be responding to any particular thing that's coming from the outside. You're just trying to improve yourself.
Yeah. When Apple started the iTunes, the whole idea of selling music online, I mean, this was not adapting to current environment, right? This was kind of taking ahead and say, this is how it will be, right? And the rest of the people, they followed, right?
Yeah.
I think the whole iOS development and idea and the gestures and the touch and the design of the applications, I think this was not adaptation to the current environment. I think Nokia was adapting to the current environment. And they were not putting enough effort in this. They were into cash collection, generating more cash from the current of products they have. And they missed opportunities, and they missed all the interaction happening in the market. And then Apple came, Apple was working on the laptops and all the kind of equipment they had. And then they started going into the mobile phones area, which was new for them, right? And they disrupted the whole thing. And what you see now, that the rest of the companies, they are coming and trying to do similar things like what Apple is doing, right? So all the whole design of things is basically following what Apple did a few years back, right? So in the first instant, this was intelligence and seeing opportunities. And later on, it became, this is the current environment, and people are adapting. The question is, what they are cooking now in their R&D labs. This would be the intelligence. So actually, part of the intelligence has to do what happens in the R&D labs and what happens in your business intelligence and market plans and sales plans. Yes.
Alejandro.
Yes, Alejandro.
But maybe this new low-cost iPhone they announced, that's an adaptation to the current environment.
Could be.
Because in a way, why do you want to downgrade your startup?
No one said that being proactive means that you don't react, right? You still need to react, but you cannot react all the time, right? Eventually, there will be some space for reactive actions. But the more proactive you are, the less reactive you are. Because now you are always ahead of the others, and the room for firefighting is less and less. This is the whole idea, right? So this is the intelligence. So forward planning, strategy, innovation, what will come next. So that's why future reading is very important if you want to lead innovative startups. You need to read the future somehow. You need to develop the skill. You need to read some sort of trends. What's happening now? Like, for example, one of the key trends now that everything is going to be video now, right? So emails probably will be video-based. Learning will be video-based. A gentleman was sitting here yesterday trying to get books into videos, right? So many things are going into the video arena, right? And consequently, all the video-related technologies like video compression and video transmission and all sorts of technologies will be booming, right? So this is a clear trend happening now. So this is one of the skills that you might want to develop yourself in is how you can read the future, how you can read trends, right? There was a question here. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Samir.
Samir.
Okay.
So talking about intelligence, so if you look at iTunes, right, there was nothing like that before. So
Yeah.
it was not intelligence that look around at people. It was a thought probably that if there is something out there like this, people would want it.
Yeah.
Right? So in such situation, I think probably the internal, what do you say, intuition or
Yeah.
intelligence would be much more important than going out and talking to people what they would like.
So this is not necessarily talking to people, right? This could be looking at trends, not necessarily looking at people. So for example, Steve Jobs, he believed that he knows what the customers need and he will develop what they need. I mean,
Yeah.
if he would ask the people what they need, probably they wouldn't know because they couldn't imagine that such a thing could be done, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, you are right. It's not necessarily going out and speaking with people, but if you are really good in like projecting trends and seeing what the people might really need and might really demand, yeah, definitely this would be part of the intelligence. Yeah.
Fadi, I think every startup is something which is non-existent.
Name.
Nasser.
Nasr.
Nasser. So, every startup is something which is probably not available, don't exist right now. So startup needs some thinking.
Yeah, true. It's true. But here is the trick. So startups, they start with vision, with an idea that will change the world, and eventually, by the time they reach to the go stage, the sales-driven stage that we spoke about, somehow you remember that they have a kind of a loss of vision, right? They lose the vision, why we are doing this, and they just focus on the sales. Yeah, please come in. Right? And they start to react to their current market, the customers, the complaints, because once you are in the stage, you have lots of hassle that you worry about. Pending orders, backlogs that you want to satisfy, human resources issues, recruitment issues, taxes issues, lawsuits that you might have faced, all sorts of things, and eventually become very reactive, right? So that's why in order to reach the prime stage, you want to revive your intelligence, the forward-looking thinking, right? And it's very important for founders not to get trapped into the day-to-day operations. You want always to have the time to look at the future, to look at the opportunities coming to you, right? You shouldn't get too much consumed by the day-to-day operations. That's why delegation is very important. Training other people is very important. Finding ways to distribute your workload and what you are doing is very important, because eventually you want to save your time and your energy to do this kind of intelligence part. Make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how to take this now? So I mean, in a startup, these are not very well defined.
True.
Like yeah. So how to take this and apply it on a startup? I mean, what's the main lesson on this?
So the main lesson is, you all familiar with this, right? What is this?
Organization chart.
Right? So this is an org chart, right? Whenever you mention an organization or a structure or managing things or managing people, what's the first the first thing that comes to your mind? An org chart, right? And an org chart is not actually a good representation of the structure of a company, of the way you manage company, because it's meaningless. What it shows some sort of responsibility lines. But actually what happened inside a startup or inside any company has nothing to do with the org chart. If you're looking from a reporting perspective, it might be yes. But from communication, for example, those people are communicating with each other all the time, right? So it's not really like this. So this is opposite to org chart. You shouldn't be thinking about your startup and your company as an org chart. When you are looking at structuring your company, you shouldn't be thinking about engineering team, sales team, marketing team, human resources people, CFO handling all the financials, right? So these are good titles, but how they fit together, how they work together in harmony, in a systemic way, and what are actually their key function, not the day-to-day operation they are doing, right? So for example, what's an HR function in essence when you map it to this model? S2? Why?
Because it's HR is managing the people, and people are the ones that are performing the primary activities, so they're keeping everyone in check. And they're firing like
Yeah.
people that need to be
Does it
fired.
do anything to the stabilization of the company?
Yeah.
How? You are right.
I mean, if people aren't performing the tasks they need to be performing, then HR is responsible for either.
And if you don't have enough flow of people coming into the company,
Right.
you will always have problems, right? So you want to maintain enough flow of people coming to the company to be employed in your company to avoid this kind of oscillation, right? So an HR function is in essence system 2 function. It's a stabilization of your system. It's not the core function. The core function would be the product development, it will be the production function, it will be maybe the kind of the supply chain, shipping things to the people, to the customers. So, so this is the core function, right? What about the finance?
Similar to HR, but just with money.
Yeah, similar. It's also system 2, right? And what about system 4? What would be this in companies or in startups? What would be system 4?
Engineering team.
Say again?
Engineering team.
Is it engineering team? What do you mean by engineering team? The one that design things?
Yeah, like the ones that are like bringing up a new line of products.
Okay, it could be.
Like R&D.
Who is the guy leading or the girl leading the
CEO.
the the intelligence, the innovation in the company? The CTO, right? The Chief Technology Officer, right? So this guy or this lady is actually looking at the technology. This person is not heavily involved in the day-to-day operation of the current product. The product should be developed, and it's a matter of producing the product. but developing new ones, looking at the technology. That's why the title is Chief Technology Officer, not Chief Product Officer, right? The COO definitely is contributing. And also, looking at systemic perspective get you away from the trap of separating functions. There is nothing called a standalone function. A CEO alone is not very effective. A CTO alone is not very effective. There is lots of overlapping, but it's very hard to deal with overlapping because it generates more complexity, right? So we prefer to separate things, right? But in your minds, I want you to think about that, yes, we might separate things like this in our chart, but in essence, it's very overlap. So the intelligence function, yes, the CTO is playing a major role in it, but the CEO is also playing a major role from a business perspective, because the opportunity could be a business opportunity, not a technological opportunity. Make sense? Questions?
Just quick comment. You were talking about how it's so important for HR to keep people going and to communicate with others. A couple of years ago, I worked with a company. We developed a model for them where they were experiencing quality problems.
Yeah.
And it turned out that it was exactly for that reason, that they didn't bring in people at the right time, that they were experiencing those oscillations.
The problem was, thank you for the addition. The problem was this model that people get alienated from their role in the company. So in my previous company in Nokia Siemens, I was sitting in one of the top sales meetings, and we have all the sales teams. And sales teams are very interesting people to deal with. The sales team.
Sales.
And we were speaking about the risk that we might not meet the targets for this quarter. So, and it's, the targets is connected to the commission, the bonuses, everything is connected to meeting your sales target, sales quota, right? So one of the salespeople, he said, we have an IT problem, and the IT people should give us all the support they can because we are the most important people in the company. What do you think of this comment? Say again? What else?
Well, if there's nothing for them to sell, then their job is worthless.
Yeah. Frankly speaking, no one is more important than the other in a company. Even the one who is doing a very simple task. Look at photocopying machines. If you are trying to print an offer to hand it to a customer, and the photocopier machine or the printing machine is not working properly, and you need the maintenance person to come and fix it, who is important than the other? So it's a question of interdependence. We are working in a very interdependent environment, right? Sales need product development needs sales. Both of them, they need the IT to give them the support, the infrastructure they will be working on. They need managers, although they are paying a lot and not doing lots of things, but they provide perspective and direction. So it's very complementary. Right?